We are back, everybody. Welcome to the first ever the SCCA eMotorsports Super Tour on iRacing. I'm Greg Ginsberg from Super Tour Radio, and I'm joined by Larry McLeod, both an SCCA national champion autocrosser and one of the voices of the national championship runoffs. And just so you're aware and you don't get scared for our well-being, wanted to let you all know that we are maintaining the CDC mandated social distancing minimum here of 6 feet. So everything should be okay here, Larry, as we get through the evening.
And we are, just so you know, those pictures were each taken about 5 minutes ago. I am wearing a t-shirt and sunglasses. My hair is groomed appropriately, and Greg is wearing a three-piece suit and a medal around his neck.
Yes, but no shoes like most of the racers, I think, that will be out here tonight. So there's
no question about who's wearing pants. I just don't really want to know.
No, and I'm not going to fill you in. Our listeners don't need to know that much about us. Anyway, this is the third of 3 races. Earlier tonight, we had Spec Racer Ford, and we also had Skip Barber Formula 2000 cars as well. And we are going to be going to Global MX-5 Cup cars here in just a few moments as qualifying gets ready to start. Real quick, we are at Summit Point Raceway. Summit Point Motorsports Park. It's a 2.1 mile, 10-turn track. It's actually my home track, so know quite a bit about it. Unfortunately, not so much in the virtual world, but as I think we've all seen throughout the day, what we have and what the drivers are experiencing online and in iRacing is actually very, very similar to what real-life driving experience is like at Summit Point. So real quick, let's go over the finishers from those Spec Racer Ford and Skip Barber races, and then we'll move on because we've got a pretty packed field of 40 cars here and some really some standout drivers that are joining us. So in Spec Racer Ford, the podium was David Gaspers, DJ Alessandrini, and also Max Grau. And Alessandrini was actually our winner for the second race, for our Skip Barber race, and I believe we're going to see him. We're going to see him starting pretty close to the front of the field. Actually, well, he was in the front of the field during practice for the MX-5 Cup. In Skip Barber, as I said, Alessandrini was your winner. Evan Rakusin finished second, and Tom O'Gorman, multi-time champion in Pirelli World Challenge, finished in third.
Yeah, and you're going to see some of the same names as you alluded to with DJ and Tomo. I think we're going to see him here as well in this race. And so to kind of recap, you mentioned about some of the names you saw on the Spec Ford. One unique thing we saw there was you had some folks that were sort of, I guess, sort of the iRacing quote-unquote pros, the folks that are very much folks like David Gaspers, and that's the car he always drives. As I'm watching the stream and seeing DJ.
It's an interesting practice.
Yeah, we're gonna ignore
cars are flying everywhere.
But it's the fun of iRacing. But David Gaspers is sort of a pro. Well, he jumped into the race earlier today, and it was great to see him bring his skills in to benchmark against someone like DJ, who runs all sorts of iRacing things, and then someone like Tomo and someone like we had the Abbott brothers and some others coming into this world and mixing it up and kind of making a big cocktail of talent and skills and seeing how it all went. It really put on a great show on this display here in iRacing this afternoon in this tour format. Then as we moved into the Skippies, we didn't really have anyone who's, I guess, a Skippy expert play it out, but we had a lot of folks that have run a variety of different cars, and that's where you saw that great battle unfold. And there with Evan chasing down O'Gorman and DJ, with DJ ended up taking the win there. But we're going to see, I think, a lot of that here as we move over to the Miatas. And what's interesting about the Miatas in this sim is it's the car is sort of the core of this sim. It's the one that it's sort of the one you have to get into, you have to run to get your first license, which is one of the requirements here to even run tonight. So everyone's got seat time in it. Everyone runs it a lot. And if you're in DJ, he's got a very high rating, as they call it. If you're not familiar with iRacing, is the more public races you run and the more you win, the better competition you go up against, the higher rating goes. DJ's got a very high rating. He does that by running this car. So he is sort of that expert in the Miata. So seeing his skills play out against some of the other high runners that you'll see, and if you when we get into qualifying here in a minute, you'll see how that kind of
we're seeing cars go flying, and having driven at Summit Point many times, I've actually seen and been in cars that have done almost the same thing, although I've never seen a car go underneath the starter bridge, and I mean literally underneath it over the grass, as DJ Alessandrini just did.
As you can tell, we're not in official qualifying yet. That was the end of practice. It's been an hour and a half after a very long day of goofing around. Everyone's having a good time, so that was just sort of blowing off some steam. We are now officially starting qualifying, and the camera shot there shows as everyone's going to get out. The great thing about this qualifying is it's more like classic SCCA Tour runoffs qualifying. It's open session. It's 10 minutes. Get out there, get some clean air, or better, find a bump draft buddy and see what kind of lap time you can put down. And with these cars, they are on the newest tire model that iRacing has to offer. Acts like a real tire. You need to go out there and get heat in that tire. It takes a couple laps. So what you're going to see is some slow times building the fast times, but cars trying to buddy up and see if they can put something fast down late in the session.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we saw during Skip Barber, where it took a number of laps, we had really a mishmash of driving styles here at Summit Point for the first couple of laps in that race, and it really took a while for everything, for most of the field to settle out, whereas DJ Alessandrini, Tom O'Gorman, and our third place finisher, Raxon, actually start to walk away from the rest of the field as they were all trying to figure out why they were sliding around so much for so many laps. But probably will be a little bit different for the MX-5 cars here today.
It does slide quite a bit on, especially on cold tires. But again, this is open setup, so you can do some suspension adjustments to these cars, sway bars, ride height, shocks. So there are some changes you can make to make the car more tolerable from a driver standpoint, and they've all been working on their setups, and some of the drivers have shared setups to each other, so that's all shaken out. So now it's really just about getting the tires warmed up, get a couple laps under your belt, settle into a rhythm, and pair up with somebody. And you can see on the screen there, that's Tom O'Gorman in the blue, yellow, green, sort of the I guess sort of Jamaican flag color car there, with DJ in the blue, white, and red, black car behind him. And if you look closely on DJ's bumper there, you'll see the Tomo. You can kind of see there's the little Tomo.
The little Tomo
glasses and the hair.
Head, yeah, with the glasses.
Yep, and I guarantee you these two are going to try and stay paired up for this session if they can, because they know that if the better you stay paired up, the faster you'll be ultimately on a qualifying lap. And with them, I want to say that is,
looks like
Kevin Zhu.
Yeah.
Yep, and he's been relatively good. I've run with Kevin a little bit in the Washington, D.C. region, has their own iRacing series they run. And I've run with Kevin. He's shown some flashes of speed as well, so he's going to try and hang with this threesome. You would not be surprised to see these three in the top 5 or 6 when we shake this out, this 40-car qualifying.
Yeah, and interesting looking at Kevin Su's car. It was a little easier to tell with the Skip Barber cars, but emulating the VAR Hondas from the early 2000s doesn't play out quite the same on an MX-5 car, but still good looking nonetheless.
Yeah, so looking at a couple other names, here's Zach Rubin, who has been on here. Also playing the livery game tonight. And so if you're not familiar with iRacing, one of the things you can do is you can create your own paint scheme for your car. You can grab one like you saw the Lucky Strike paint on that one, or you can create your own, as Zach has done here. Going to get plenty of camera time for that. But there's a lot of other names in this field that have come to this iRacing event for the SCCA from different disciplines. We talked about Tom coming out of TCR, Run for Early World Challenge. You've got DJ, who's done obviously his autocross days, jumped into doing the Grid Life Touring Cup. There's Sel and Roland. They're in that number 87 car. And we go down this list, and you've got some wide variety of names in this group.
Yeah, and so and Roland, Spec Miata driver, but also spent the last year in Global MX-5 Cup in the real car. So you'd hope he has a little bit of experience. I think he was at the end of the practice session. I believe that he was somewhere down around the middle of the pack.
22nd out of 40, so right there in the middle of it.
Yeah. And one driver, and I don't know if we really need to look out for him, and I think he's been sitting somewhere around the bottom half of the field, is Andy DeLay, who's actually one of my broadcasting partners on the Super Tour. Andy is
look at the logo on the car.
Yeah, look at that. He's all set up. Andy, great story. Andy is a former law enforcement officer down in Florida, and he now has the Burning Rubber Racing Report on many many radio stations, as well as the Burning Rubber radio show on the Performance Motorsports Network. So we'll definitely be looking for him, but he's, I think, qualified somewhere around 35th, or it was about 35th in practice, pardon me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Looking at a couple of the other names that we have in here. Oh, let's see.
Sandy Satullo, who we saw a little bit earlier in the day.
Andrew Abbott running, of course, he runs Formula V. He's been running all day today, ran the SRFs. He's been running the Skippies. You mentioned Sandy Satullo with his, is that a Lego livery on his?
There you go. It's indeed the Lego system car in the 07 right over there. And Sandy is a Spec Racer Ford Gen 3 driver in SCCA and quite well accomplished on the Super Tour. Let's see, who else do we have? Now, we saw Richard Spicer listed, and we're still trying to figure out if that is actually the Richard Spicer.
We think it is.
Yeah, we think it is. Richard was the 2012 Spec Racer Ford National Champion and also 2007 Indy Lights champion as well. He won the what are we calling it? The spillover race?
The overflow race.
The overflow race, pardon me, from the Skippy cars.
The spillover is what you do when you're tapping your keg of Bud Light and it just comes out. And I mentioned that because of his livery, but it was the overflow race.
The overflow race. That will come at 10 p.m. Eastern. Yeah, so he did win a race today. He was in that overflow race. Now, of course, these races were open to all drivers, but we have had to cap the fields for each one of the 3 races at 40 cars, and that's really due to a technical issue that iRacing is having at this time. But all of those drivers, they had a practice qualifying and race, and if they want to, they can. We had them scheduled early enough that they can actually come and watch this race with all of you.
So a quick little rundown. At the top of the order right now, you got Tomo with 22.3, 1 minute 22.3. DJ Alessandrini at 1 minute 22.4. As we just had on the camera there a minute ago, as those who are still running those as well, there they are. As I mentioned, that's how you need to qualify well here. You've got to team up with a buddy and you got to go fast, and they're doing that very well. Caleb Patry, who had run pretty well in the Skip Barber practice, was running that race earlier today. There he is right now, currently sitting 3rd in qualifying. Again, we've probably got about 2 laps. This will be hot laps count when we go checker here. So if you can come across, you might get 2 more laps if you're coming across start finish now. Caleb's currently 3rd. Jake King ran one of our earlier races. He's currently in 4th. Currently in 5th, you mentioned talking about Richard Spicer. He's currently 5th right now in this session at a 1:22.7. just to tick off where he was in his earlier times. So times are already down to where they were in practice.
Yeah, and then we've got Khalil Narraboth, who just moved up to 6th. Khalil is an SSM driver, form of Spec Miata for the in the Mid-Atlantic Road Racing Series, the series put on by the Washington, D.C. region. Then Krista Shong sitting in 7th. He's an STU driver, drives a Honda Prelude. And he is currently, as I mentioned, up to 7th. Phil Resch 8th, Mitchell Peak 9th, and Alexander Lekowitz currently running in 10th, or is 10th fastest, pardon me, in qualifying right now, with just about a minute 45 left to go.
And again, so hot laps will count. So as we count this down, we got to wait till the checker flag flies. So as long as you're across before that flies, the lap you're on will continue to count. If somebody decides to go backwards at about 80 miles an hour,
and that was Tom O'Gorman. Yeah, so Gorman that went off coming out of 3 on the way down to the chute.
Or is that? Yeah, here he goes.
Oh, actually, yeah.
All right. Yep. Just get a little bit loose through there. See, he's going to have to pick up that pace again here as he comes out through the S's and see if he can come down. He's going to probably only get 1 more lap as this is now under 1 minute. So those cars cross the start finish now will get their last lap. He is currently your pole sitter, although DJ is out there now, and so is Caleb Petrie and Jake Gang, Richard Spicer, who's gone into the 10 quicker, still in 5th though. Can anybody get into the 22.2s? But at the end of the day, I think this is going to be one of those races. I don't know that being on pole matters too much. What matters is going to be getting a clean start, being in the top maybe 3 to 4 rows, and not getting caught in any sort of issues off the start.
All right, we've got the number 40 car, a Phoenix Performance Racing car, sitting upside down. That's Colin Denner. And apparently still throwing a lot of debris.
Davies' car. I was like, wait, do we have a Mustang or a Corvette in this race? I didn't know.
Yeah, exactly. It looks like it might be a cars and coffee event over here with him. All right.
You went there.
Yes, of course. All right, so let's take a look here.
So checkers out, laps what counts.
Yeah. And we were talking about DJ Alessandrini driving underneath the flag stand earlier. We're trying to get a number.
Shot here.
Yeah, actually drove.
Chris DeShong's car is decided he wanted to go visit the flag stand, and maybe he wants to wave the checker himself, but he's parked there, right there on the hillside. Great shot. I don't know if he actually crossed finish line. He's barely there.
No, yeah, he's.
He wants to get the photo finish.
Yeah, I think the stanchion holding up the flag stand might actually be keeping him from going over start finish.
All right, he's moving. He's trying to.
Yeah, he's trying to get up the berm and go directly underneath the bridge. Not able to do it though.
All right, so I don't know that we've had any changes. It's Lolo Gorman, Alessandrini on the front row, Caleb Patry and Jake King second row, Richard Spicer.
Yeah, actually, it did have a bit of a change. Had Narraboth go up to 6th. Elias Roman moved up into the top 10, qualifies 7th. Then we've got the Shong. I think you can write off that last lap of his. Philip Resch 9th, Mitchell Peak 10th. So that actually bumped Lekowitz out of the top 10 there with that great last lap run by Elias Roman. All right, so now that we have the qualifying in the books, let's take a look at this 2.1 mile, 10-turn Summit Point Raceway track. We start off on the very long front straight. The front straight here at Summit, about 3/4 of a mile long. And as you get to the end of that straightaway, you're going to go into one of the two very heavy threshold braking turns here at Summit Point. And that is turn 1, which is a right-hand turn, which opens up very wide sweeping turn. Turns 1 and 2 are more or less a combination turn. And as you come out of turn 2, you'll end up on a very short straightaway heading down towards turn 3. Turn 3, slight brush of the brake for most cars, or maybe a little bit of a breathe on the throttle, and then you have a left-hand turn. You want to stay clear of the curbing at the apex because it'll really unsettle the car, but it is an increasing radius turn, and you can actually as you straighten the car out on exit, even if you run a little bit wide into the gravel, not a big problem because the track will come back to you. You then head down into what is called the chute, which is a downhill right-hander, which is off camber. It's actually the fastest turn here at Summit Point, and then you'll hit the second of the very heavy braking turns. It's turn 5. It's the slowest turn on the track. Most cars about 35 to 40 miles an hour. You'll make a left-hand turn, which will then set you up for the carousel. That's turn 6, 6A, 6B, 7, and 8. It's that carousel area is actually the longest straightaway here at Summit Point. It'll then bring you up the hill, underneath the bridge into turn 10, and 90-degree right-hander, fairly high-speed turn. Most cars apex that at anywhere between 85 and 95 miles an hour, and back onto the front straight for the finish.
So what I think you see a lot of with these cars that maybe we know we didn't see a lot with the Spec Racer Fords the first race. These guys are going to use a lot more curves. Yes. And you mentioned there about that turn, the fast turn 10 there to lead you to the front straightaway. You saw it increasing through the day. The Spec Fords would just touch that. The Skippies would use a bunch. These Miatas are going to be clobbering that thing. Yeah,
they're going to be clobbering them, and the curbing at a lot of these turns, not very high, not very elevated. Turn 10 is actually one of the flattest turns, and actually, when this track was scanned by iRacing, in my front-wheel drive Honda touring car, I would typically have my right wheels actually all the way over the curbing, because you could literally just drive over it. It was nice and flat.
How is that car these days? Is it doing okay?
It hasn't been on the track since 2010.
Yeah. What happened to it in 2010? Anything good?
Let's
not talk about it.
It finished 8th at the runoffs.
Hey, there you go.
All right. So here at Summit Point tonight, again, it's almost 8 o'clock. About an hour behind, but we're still at about 80 degrees Fahrenheit, 93 degrees for track surface. It's actually very similar to what we saw just a couple hours ago for the Skip Barber, and very little wind, very similar weather to what we would see at Summit Point this time of the year. So Larry, let's go and we'll run down the starting grid.
All right, so on pole, able to hang on despite having an issue there late in the session is Tom O'Gorman on the pole there. Right next to him is his drafting partner, DJ Alessandrini, who won our Skippy race earlier this afternoon. Second row, Caleb Patry, and alongside him is going to be Jake King. On row 3, Richard Spicer alongside Khalil Nardaboth. On row 4, Elias Roman and Chris DeShong moving himself up there at the end of that session. Row 5, Philip Resch and Mitchell Peak. Making up row 6, Alexander Lukowitz, one of our drivers, has been part of this all day long. He's going to be alongside Wan Shi Lin. Row 7, Matt Brennan and Zach Rubin. Row 8, Kevin Zhu and Andrew Abbott, one of our road racers out of Formula V. Row 9, Ryan Davies and David Stern.
David Stern, a Spec Miata driver from the DC region.
He'll know how to bump draft around here.
Yes, he will.
For sure. Let's see, in the next row we got Matt Reynolds. I think he knows his way around a Spec Miata as well, alongside Matthew Herman on row 10.
All right, so
back in the field.
Yeah, and so as the field now is making their way down into turn 5 on the pace lap here, we talked about the overflow races earlier. Let's talk about quickly. We'll give you the rundown of the overflow race for the Global MX-5 Cup. Taking the win today was Leighton Carter. Chris Bermudez finished second. Giancarlo Lenzi finished on the last step of the podium. And this was a group that really had some very notable road racing names, not just virtual racing, but SCCA road racer names here. We had Derek Kulak, who is, I believe, a multi-time national champion, was in the field. Michael Carter, who has won multiple Super Tour and Majors races and raced in the Global MX-5 Cup
he had a great race
last year. Yeah, and he finished, I believe, in 6th, right ahead of Preston Pardis, who is our 2017 national champion in Spec Miata. So a little, I guess, a little disappointing that that Pardis wasn't able to make the field. But Larry, we've got the field now coming through turn 10. We can tell by that huge gravel trap there coming onto the front straight, and we should have a green flag in just a moment.
Yep, MX-5 Cups, these guys can be fast, can be a lot of drafting, a lot of close, a lot of rubbing, a lot of contact. They will not be maintaining 6 feet. I can guarantee you that. It's going to be coronavirus all over the place.
All over the place. All right, and we have a green flag, and the drivers now have made their way past the start-finish bridge. Stepping out into the front, it is Tom O'Gorman in the number 194 car, and he's got Alessandrini in the 91 right behind him. Slotting in just behind them, we've got Caleb Patry and Jake King.
Yep, nice and easy, a lot of discipline up at the front. They know this is a long race. They know that you just got to get through the first turn, a lot of single file, and just let the tires warm up before anybody starts going side by side. But you start seeing in that 12th to 15th to 20th spot in that range.
Yeah, they're already starting to go. Nice. Yeah, they're already starting to go side by side here, but already we can see that the first lap to this point has been much cleaner than the 2 previous races that we had earlier today.
Oh, so we're getting word that Tomo may be running old school on his wheel that he's running with. So you know when you're running an iRacing and any kind of sim, you get some force feedback, you can feel the wheel kicking back to you. Tom's wheel doesn't have that. In fact, I saw a picture he posted earlier. He had a pack of ice, like an ice bag, over his wheel to try and keep the temperature down. Nope, not working. He's running completely without feedback, which is not easy to do.
All right, we just had the 36 car that Yushan Lin go around in the exit of turn 5. He's going to fall all the way back to the very rear of the field. He was running about 16th. All right, so we've got our leaders now going side by side down the front straight. We've got O'Gorman to driver's left on the outside. We've got Alessandrini to the inside. This is actually looking almost like the very last lap of the Skip Barber race. We'll see if, and you'll notice O'Gorman gave Alessandrini a little bit more room than he did at the end of the last race, where the 2 drivers actually came together. But sitting now right behind them is it's a 4-car battle for the lead. We got Patry and King sitting right behind them, and I think both of them are just kind of sitting back. I think they're going to just try and sit in the draft, as we've got really about a 4-car breakaway at this point. Although our leaders, they're
more
coming
like a 10-car.
Yeah.
And having called the Spec Miata at the runoffs, this is exactly how the runoffs went at VIR. If you went back, if you haven't watched it, go to SCCA.com, Google it. They're all archived there.
All right, looks like Sandy Satullo having a bit of a problem going into turn 3 in the Lego car. Got spun around. Satullo, a noted Spec Racer 4 Gen 3 driver, in SCCA racing, and he, of course, now loses numerous positions as he tries to get back underway.
But at the runoffs, the way that the Spec Miatas went is this pack of 9 or 10 broke away from the back, and what happens is, although you get more than a second behind someone, you lose that draft. So it's really important to keep that 1 second margin. At VIR, it was hugely important to be able to go down the long back straight. Not as critical here, but the front straight is pretty big. So you're going to be watching that group of now maybe 5 cars try and hold. Can the 6th and 7th car, right now that's Khalil Narraboth, Elias Roman, can they stay close to Richard Spicer, Jake King to not let a gap form? That's where you start looking to see, because it's all about maintaining a gap and don't lose that gap.
Yeah, exactly. You want to be in that lead pack when the time comes towards the end of the race in order to make the move, as opposed to the Skip Barber race where we saw our top 3 cars really separate themselves out from the rest of the field almost immediately, and we're not seeing that here today.
And I think the difference is that Skippy, in a way, on cold tire is much harder to drive than the Miata on cold tires. The Skippy is just it's dangerous. It's so hard to drive. It's evil. It wants to just throw you around. It wants to slide around. It's so hard on cold tires. The Miata, it warms up, it gets better, but it's not going to kill you on cold tires. And we're seeing that these top 9.
All right, and as we're looking at Brendan Horn now getting right up onto the rear of the car right in front of him, that's Rick Cohn. Not exactly a place you would expect to see bump drafting, which is over in turn 6B at the start of the carousel there, but maybe just a little nudge to move him forward. All right, we've got a battle now going on for second, sitting side by side. We've got Patry and we've got Tom O'Gorman now. Move Patry up to second. Move O'Gorman now back into third spot in the number 194 car. And then we've got Jake King and Richard Spicer. And that little side-by-side battle with Patry and O'Gorman, Larry, it's really allowed Alessandrini to start moving away. He's now got about a 3.5 car length lead on our second place runner, Patry.
Yeah, and so again, if you're not an iRacing driver, you don't know. One of the things that drivers have on their screen in front of them is a screen, it's a gap screen, or a relative screen as we call it, and it tells you the time delta to the 3 cars on track in front of you and the 3 cars on track behind you. So you know whether you're 1 second or less to the car in front, the one in front of them, and the one in front of them. And if you're Tom right now, or you're let's say Jake King or somebody, you know what that gap is in front. You're just trying to make sure it stays to 6, 7, 10s, because you know once you get to this 9 to 10 straightaway, or from 10 down to 1 straightaways, it's fine. You can pull those through. What hurts you is when that hits 1.0, 1.1, and now you know you can't pull that together. So that's really what this matters. When you come, loving the livery on side of Zach Rubin's car,
yeah,
it's finally.
and it's on the hood and on the back too. Yeah, it's that's spectacular. The money guy. Yeah, that's. Well, we don't know how much he might have actually paid somebody to design that for him. You never know. I'm getting word that he actually made it himself. All right, so coming out of turn 2 now. I was watching our leaders, and Alessandrini once again stretches things out to about 2.5 car lengths. Now, you mentioned, Larry, that Tom O'Gorman was going old school, but I don't think he actually mentioned what that meant. That for most of these iRacers, the steering wheels actually have feedback, what they call force feedback, so you can feel the undulations in the road, you can feel the wheels chatter if you lock them up, what have you. And O'Gorman is having some issues with that, so it's kind of akin to driving my parents' old '84 Coupe de Ville, I guess. And
yes.
Yeah.
So definitely power steering.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a challenge, because obviously you don't get any feedback through the brake pedal. You don't get it back through your seat unless you've got, a couple $1,000 shaker rig. And so, Tom is just kind of, going by eyesight, I think, more than anything else.
It's funny because talk a little bit about the drivers that are more my age, not to give too much away. I'm in my 40s, you're in your 40s beyond. Those of us that didn't grow up on sim racing, we weren't 7, 8, 9 years old with a sim in our house, but a lot of guys that were in their 20s did. One of the ways when they were 6, 7, 8 years old they learned to drive wasn't by seat of the pants. They learned to drive by eyes and ears. When they got to a real car, they didn't need seat of the pants. They didn't necessarily need as much feedback in their hands or that seat feeling of lateral G's. They could drive by what they see and what they hear. So someone like Tom, who's still in his 20s, he can do that.
All right, great move right there. Elias Roman looks like he is coming up right on Khalil Narraboth. and he's pulling Chris DeShong right along, and there goes Narraboth off in the dirt. Now, I was telling you, Larry, about the Spec Miata line through turn 3.
That was it, huh?
That is what the SSM drivers in the Washington, D.C. region do. But I don't think that was intentional. And we now have a change in position here where Elias Roman has moved up to 6th, and he's gotten around Khalil Narraboth to put Narraboth back down to 7th as Chris DeShong in the 41 car sits right behind.
What you can see has happened, though, is that battling has dropped them back from the lead pack, and now you've got a full breakaway of the top 5 and a second pack now of 4 that's formed. There's no way that second pack is going to catch the front pack.
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult at best for them to make it back up there. As our leader, DJ Alessandrini, followed by Caleb Patry, come through turn 10. Then we've got about 2.5 car lengths back to Tom O'Gorman and Richard Spicer in the 21 car. But it looks like Spicer might be ready to step out to attempt to pass on O'Gorman. No, he holds station, and I think he realized that if he had stepped out, he might have had the 39 of Jake King slot in and might have made things very difficult for him. Now, Andrew Abbott, we can see here going side by side into turn number 1 with the 26 car right behind, and right behind the 26, Ryan Davies in the number 93 car as well.
Yeah, Ryan, one of our autocrossers out of Virginia there. He runs a lot of national solo events. Always good with a joke, a lot of fun to be around. He's a good guy, runs a lot of the region stuff here as well as iRacing. Never claims to be the fastest, but he's a lot of fun to hang around with. He's being a part of this today. It's always good.
All right.
But good battles here, and I tell you, this battle up runs.
Yeah, and we're looking again at that the battle for 6th with Roman, Narraboth, DeShong, and also Lekowitz as well there, as you can see in the number 168 car. So as we mentioned, now it looks like they've kind of settled down, and I think they've realized that they kind of need to work together if they're going to get back into that into the battle for the lead there. As Alessandrini has, it looks like he had a bit of an issue coming off of turn 10. I don't know if he was trying to get defensive as sharp a maneuver as that was. I don't think that was actually a move to be defensive
now going into
it certainly is now. As all the drivers then follow him along, and as he moves back over to driver's left to start over, set up for turn 1, all the other drivers do as well.
Yeah, this package is interesting, and what I want to kind of keep an eye on through this group is probably going to be Richard Spicer to see, because I know that O'Gorman and Alessandrini run together a lot. I've seen Spicer run a little bit with these guys, but I know that Spicer's got the chops to run with them, and I'll be curious to see at what point does he decide to chuck himself in the middle of this and make a move. He seems to be really patient right now, sitting here in the 4th spot, just kind of watching what's going on in front of him.
All right, and just before we switch to that front view, noticed another change. Looks like Lekowitz managed to get around Narraboth, and actually Narraboth, I believe, took the car off track one more time. I'm showing him down in 11th position right now. So he really needs to settle down, and hopefully he can bring that car back a little bit further up the field, although he is now slotted right in traffic, and I believe right behind Peak.
Yeah, it's a good little battle there as well, and that's the thing about this car is it creates these wonderful little battles, regardless of whether it's the front 5, the next 4, or even that battle we just saw with Peak there for 10th. You're never really out of one. You're always in the middle of some kind of heated battle.
Yeah, and it's very similar to what you find in regular Spec Miata driving or in Global MX-5 Cup racing as well, with all of these identically prepared cars. All right, so we're watching now as our leader, DJ Alessandrini, comes through turn 1, heading into turn 2, and as you can see, he's got Caleb Patry, O'Gorman, and Richard Spicer very, very close behind now. And let's go and add in Jake King in the number 39 car. He's only about a car length off of that battle as well.
Yeah, I think King's going to get himself caught here pretty quick because he doesn't have a drafting partner in the middle of all that.
And so you'll notice now as the drivers are coming down in turn 5, and reading that, there was a bit of discussion, and Larry, you and I actually talked about this before all the racing started today, as far as what kind of a line to go and take into turn 5. And most of the MX-5 Cup drivers are taking a line almost down the center of the track to set up. And that is primarily so that they can get braking done more or less in a straight line, but it also helps to defend just a little bit to the inside going into 5. And again, it's a very slow turn, but there is always the opportunity to sneak underneath somebody, not to the outside of them there, however. Whereas online, a lot of the drivers who traditionally race Summit point saying, you know, track the car all the way out the driver's left, and it allows you to carry as much speed as possible down through turn 4, which again is the fastest the fastest turn here on the track. All right, let's take a look here. We've got Narraboth trying to make his way back up through the field. He's got Mitchell Peak now, who makes the pass on Philip Resch, and going off track. Looks like that was Peak. Went in just a little bit too hot, puts himself off into the gravel trap, but is able to continue. Drops a couple of positions. He now is dropped down all the way to 14th position. Yeah,
one off there in turn 1 and 2, and forget it, you're not going to be able to catch back up. You can manage an off, certainly at 3, because you keep that momentum, but the fact that it's basically a hairpin there at 1, and you're going to lose it big wide there coming through 5, or into 5, coming off 4. You can catch which car that was, but...
Yeah, I unfortunately I didn't see it here, as Alessandrini now is leading the field up through turn 8, and you'll notice as our 4th place driver Richard Spicer crested over the apex curbing at turn 4, that and really very similar to what you're going to find at Summit Point Raceway. Actually lifted the car up just a little bit there at the curbing. There's a small dip right at about the apex at the curbing there, and it really will unsettle a car. There's also a crown in the middle of the track at the as you try to exit out of turn 8, which if you don't keep your foot on the throttle, or if you shift, if you go and shift a little bit early, also can really unsettle the car. All right, Alessandrini washing a little bit wide now, coming out of turn 1, but that will let him allow him to set up for turn 3. A little bit defensive now. We got O'Gorman and Patry might have touched as they went through turn 3 there. Yeah, and I am getting reports that
Spicer's going to keep that line behind O'Gorman and ride it right into 5.
Yeah, and as he comes down, so we have a new 3rd place runner. That is the 21 car of Richard Spicer. Falling back to 4th now is Caleb Patry. Jake King has managed to pick up some ground. You can see the damage that was done to the number 2 car there of Patry. We'll have to see how that affects him. And you know, since O'Gorman can't feel anything in the steering wheel anyhow, it may not. Actually, it may affect him even more. It might be a little bit more difficult for him to adjust if there was any kind of damage that might have knocked the alignment out at the front of the car there. But that battle there really has now allowed Alessandrini to separate himself from the rest of the field. He now has about a 3.5, almost 4 car length lead on O'Gorman, Spicer, Patry, and King.
That's about 8/10, and it's getting up there. Any sort of movement by the 2nd and 3rd place battle. This is where it's really careful by O'Gorman and Spicer to not fight each other. But unfortunately, O'Gorman sort of missed the braking point just a little bit, and that's going to hurt because it slows Spicer up, and that's just going to extend that lead for DJ. And DJ is just...
All right, we got the battle picking up again here as we switch over to the battle for 6th, Larry, where we've got Alexander Lekowitz, Zach Rubin, and Chris DeShong in the 41 car trailing behind. They're now making their way out of turn 3 down into turn 4. Narraboth, who had those couple of offs earlier in the race, he's really fallen off the scent now. He's about 15 car lengths back with Roman, Sue, and Herman behind him. But let's take a look now. We'll jump back over to our leaders as Alessandrini really starting to separate himself out as he rises over the curbing. Yeah, and we've got then O'Gorman, Spicer, Patry, and King now as they come under the bridge. And again, I keep looking at the line here that they're taking under the bridge a little bit further left than I would have imagined. Shorter run if they move a little bit further to the right, but it looks like once again.
It's the momentum.
Yeah, Narraboth off again. Yeah. Let's take a look here. We're going to take a look here where he went off. It was over a turn 8. And, as the track and as more drivers put rubber down on the track, you're going to find that you do start to get marbles on the outside of some of these turns. But I'll tell you, if you go into turn 8 and you turn in a little late and you end up on the outside of the track, there just isn't a lot of grip there. It's great in the wet, but we got a great take a look at this.
Jake King and Alexander Lekowitz there. Sorry, that's Caleb Patry.
It's Patry coming out of turn 3 as those two drivers get together and take a little ride through the gravel.
Right, and we just saw as a King a bit ago, I think, had that contact earlier with O'Gorman. Now he's a little bit slower, and now they're going to just be gapped behind Spicer and O'Gorman, kind of leaving a three-way fight for the front. And this should be about 2 laps to go next time by.
Yeah, I'm showing that we've got, all right, 21st position right now. That is Rick Cohn in the 98 car. Looks like he's fallen off. Let's take a look. And yeah, he went for the wild ride there.
Out of the southeast region, southeast area, out of the Georgia, Atlanta region, I think.
Here we go, and he didn't get anywhere near the turn in for turn 3. Yeah, it's possible, Larry, that he might have had some issues with the steering rack in that car. A part of the damage model of these cars is you can break things like tie rods and what have you. And another car going off on the front straight, and that was Ryan Davies, who's also had some issues. Goes over the berm between 2 and 3. Let's take a look at that. Yeah, there we go. Quite a ride for Ryan. Yeah, Andrew Abbott, it looked like, was the other driver involved in that incident. Let's take a closer look.
Just a little rub there.
Yeah, and over the over one of the access roads, and over one of the berms, and over to where the SCCA instructors will normally watch the practice starts during driver's schools at Summit Point.
All right, so we've got about a lap and a half to go as we are going to go white flag next time by, and DJ's it's down to about 6/10 as Tomo's been able to stay close. Spicer's right there. Really what's got to happen here, if you're Spicer or Tomo's, you've got to get up onto the bumper of DJ on the last lap. So you can afford to be 6/10 back now, but you got to get it down to 2/10 and be right on him by the time you get to turn 5 on this lap, I think. And that's, or at least as you, maybe 3/10 by turn 5, and be probably 3 or 2/10 maybe by the time you're coming off the 10.
Yeah, and it's looked like Alessandrini hasn't been running the cleanest laps the last couple times around. And you'll see now going down into turn 1, O'Gorman able to close right up on Alessandrini. But let's take a look. We'll see here. Was watching that battle again for 6th with Lekowitz, Rubin, and DeShong. They're still going at it. And it looks like Lekowitz might have things under control, but DeShong still really, actually, they're all nipping at each other's tails right now.
A little wide slide there by DeShong, but they're in the same situation as their top 3 are. Is you need to be close to Lekowitz, so we'll see if Rubin can do that here as he's right on the going into 5.
Yeah, and this is the battle between Patry and King that we were just looking at a moment ago, as King is trying to get around Patry to take 3rd position, the last step on the podium. But O'Gorman has definitely closed things up on Alessandrini, little off the apex there, and lost a little bit of ground, however.
What I didn't see was what happened to Spicer, is he's now dropped quite a bit back from O'Gorman.
All right, coming out of turn 10 for the final time, DJ Alessandrini. He's got about 2 car lengths on Tom O'Gorman. Don't think O'Gorman, and he hasn't been able to the last couple of laps, a little bit too far out of the draft, and now he pulls completely out of the draft. And looks like Alessandrini gonna take the win.
He does. So a really solid win there for DJ, able to kind of hold through that. Behind them, though, we had a couple of good battles still kind of waging through.
Yeah, great battle there with Lekowitz, Rubin, and DeShong, and it's going to stay that way. So let's go as final drivers are starting to
Pastor Jack.
Yeah, there's Pastor Jack now, and he made up 6 positions in the race here.
Yes, he's right there on the tail of Jeff Filipowski for this will be for 22nd spot.
Yes, and both of those drivers made some great moves. Filipowski picking up 9 positions during the race here.
Filipowski picking up, picked up 9. Might have been one of our biggest movers in this race.
All right, so let's go run down the final results here. Of course, all results are unofficial, pending protest. You never know what you might see end up at the Court of Appeals and in the fast track next month. Taking the win.
Got to go to the tech shed.
There you go. Taking the win today, DJ Alessandrini in the number 91 car, followed by Tom O'Gorman. He finishes second. Caleb Patry takes the third step on the podium. Jake King finishes fourth. Richard Spicer fifth. Alexander Lekowitz finishes in sixth. Zach Rubin seventh. Chris DeShong finishes eighth. Elias Roman finishes in ninth. Matthew Herman finishes in 10th. Then we've got Mitchell Peak 11th. Phil Rush finishes 12th. Finishing 13th is Kevin Sue. Then we got Khalil Narraboth falls back to 14th. Then Andrew Abbott 15th. Matt Brennan 16th. Selin Rowland 17th. Brennan Horan 18th. Maxwell Kittleson 19th. And Brian Zabelski finishes in 20th.
All right, with that, I want to say a couple things. This has been an awesome day. 3 great races. A lot of folks were able to come out and have some fun. I think we're going to see a lot more of this, maybe this format, maybe a tweak. We're probably going to see some races popping up during the week. So people that are listening and watching from home, keep your eyes open for some more streaming races to watch. Keep your eyes open for some races to join and get in on part of the fun. Want to make sure we thank the folks, the national office, for putting this stuff on, bringing this together. They worked their tails off for it. Steve Ray, a name you probably or may not have heard of. He had a lot to do with putting this on. And of course, the folks at Sim TV for being a big part of this and being the production behind the scenes that maybe you haven't heard of either. They're one of the up-and-coming stars when it comes to broadcasting sim racing. So really appreciate all that work. And Greg, this has been a huge fun day for me. I'm sure it has been for you.
It has been wonderful. It's been wonderful for me, and having been sitting at home rather than being able to go out and announce at the physical Super Tour races this year, at least to this point, this has been a great opportunity. And as you mentioned, I want to thank all the folks, of course, Steve Ray, Kyle Heiser with Sim TV, Tom O'Gorman, and also Andy Wolf, who's been a great help today as well. Don't want to leave her out. So for everybody involved with the SCCA eMotorsports Super Tour, I'm Greg Ginsberg with Larry McLeod. Want to thank you all for joining, and we're going to see you soon.